What's the stupidest thing you've ever heard anyone say? Apparently, when my daughter was first born, she looked vaguely East Asian enough, at least, for the nurses to ask if I was sure it was my baby. Now, that was an incredibly weird thing to say to a new dad meeting his daughter for the first time, but it wasn't the stupidest thing someone said about this situation. That happened when I was retelling the above story to a client in a meeting. He asked to see a photo of my kid as a newborn, remarked how she really did look Asian, and then proceeded to ask if I thought my child might end up having an Asian accent when she got older. I've posted this before, but I once found a big bulldog in my backyard. I don't own a bulldog. He was a big, friendly, but slow-witted guy. He looked healthy and had a collar, but no tags, so I knew he was a local. I made sure he had water and went to the front yard to start knocking on doors. As soon as I stepped outside, I saw the family 3 houses down all gathered in their front yard. So another case closed for our young detective. I walked over to them and said, "You guys missing a bulldog?" The mother looked at me and said, "Is his name Tyson?" The question took me aback. I mean, he didn't have tags. They knew he didn't have tags. So all I could think to say was, "He didn't say. But I'm pretty sure he's yours." To this day, I wonder if that woman knew how dumb that question was. One night in the early days after my first child was born, when we were still in a sleep-deprived delirium every night, our oldest cat started meowing and making a ruckus at around 2 a.m. This was wildly uncharacteristic of him, as he was generally very quiet and even-keeled. My wife, half asleep, rolls over and says, "Can you go downstairs and talk to the cat?" Obviously, I knew what she meant, but the mental image of going downstairs, pouring a couple fingers of whiskey, and sitting down with Puma to talk about his day was riotously funny to me for quite some time. Met a fully grown man who thought India was one of the continents. When I told him it wasn't, he said, "But it's so big." My teacher told a class of 16 to 17-year-olds about that super loyal dog in Japan who walked to the train station daily for 9 years to wait for his owner, who died at work. After hearing that story, a girl raised her hand and asked, "Why didn't somebody just tell the dog?" I mean, dumb, but also not. Dogs actually can understand that their masters will die. You can't tell them, but you can show them and they can understand it. There's a movement of pet owners who insist that they want their pets to attend the funeral so that they can understand and move on. Because some dogs who see their owners die will actually move on and be happy. I was walking around the ruins of the ancient cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde just outside of Mancos, Colorado, where the ancient Puebloans lived from approximately 550 AD to 1300 AD, when a visitor asked the tour guide, "Why did they build their homes so far from the highway? I can jump that far." Me. One classmate of mine once answered to the teacher, "A lot of people died in the Cold War because it was too cold." My wife and I were vacationing in St. Augustine, Florida, and went to a big cat rescue. This particular one had other animals as well. A few peahens were walking about, and a husband asks his wife, "What is that?" The wife replies, "I think that's a turducken." I barely held it together. I was driving with someone and there was a trooper up ahead and I told her to slow down. She said she couldn't because the cop would see the brake lights on the front of her car. When I was 12 years old, a friend told me smoking is good for you because the smoke makes a shield around your heart when you breathe it in. He argued that the smoke could prevent you from being stabbed or shot. Even at 12, I knew he was a moron. Asked someone if they drove a stick. They responded, "No, I drive a car." Now I have a dad joke I'll remember forever. In 8th grade, our teacher said that if our essays were 2 or more pages, we had to staple them. The kid next to me asked, "Staple them together?" During my student teaching semester of grad school, a student asked me why we needed to learn about history. She said it didn't really apply to everyone's lives and wouldn't be important for everyone's future. This was during a WW2 unit, and I argued that much of our current culture and world were shaped by the conflict, but decided to see what specifically she had in mind. I asked her, "What is your ideal job that you're currently planning to pursue?" Depending on what she answered, we'd discuss how historical factors played into different markets, jobs, social and economic evolutions throughout history, and how they apply. To be honest though, I was a bit unsure if I'd be able to adequately convey my thoughts to her depending on her answer. She, however, who didn't understand the importance of learning history, wanted to become a lawyer. The look on my supervising teacher's face was something else. Some of the kids in college, you just had to shake your head at. I was a tutor for our philosophy, logic, and ethics classes, along with a few other if we had students come in and ask for help. One of my students came in, because like usual they were having issues in reading the philosophy class readings. Said student just didn't understand why they even had to take this, what use was using logic, at all, and directly in figuring out what a philosopher's argument was. Said student's major? Criminal justice. Thankfully, after a few questions, prodding in the right direction got the student to figure out that logic plays a huge role in everything from laws to criminal investigations. So it was dumb, but at least the student was smart enough to ask questions and then learn. So more it was just ignorance, and that thankfully can be cured. They did thank me a couple of years later when I ran into them, as learning to look at assignments/readings/and writing papers using the logical skills they learned helped them out in all of their other classes. My coworkers convinced another coworker that if you count the lines on your hands, that will tell you how many chromosomes you have. If you have over 50, then you're gifted. I think he counted 80 or something and was so excited he told his GF, parents, family etc. to count the lines on their hand. He didn't last much longer at the job. Maybe he did have a few extra chromosomes. Chatting about my friend's upcoming jury duty, she says. They wouldn't be up in court unless they'd done it. Maybe not the stupidest thing I've ever heard, but it's in the top 10. My ex-boyfriend said, if you're accused of something, you basically did it. So much for rule of law, presumption of innocence, and the last 1,000 years. I had to do a quiz with the kids in an elementary school. I asked this boy the following question. What language do you speak at home? Oh, yeah, I can't speak. Because I'm blind. COVID vaccines are a secret government method for tracking people. Sure, because registering to vote, getting a social security number, getting a driver license/ID, possessing an address, mobile phone, and birth certificate are just not cutting it. I always LOL when people talk about the government planting chips in our brains to read our minds. Hate to break it to you, but they one up that, and now you pay for them to know all your nasty thoughts and secrets. Our phones will tell them more about us than any chip ever could. When my friend ordered a cruller donut, the lady remarked, "That's the one that looks like a tire." Without missing a beat, my buddy goes, "Don't all donuts look like a tire?" A friend asked us how to spell ESPN so we could look it up online. He asks, "How do you spell ESPN, is it ESPEN?" I had an American, fully grown with children, on Xbox Live ask me, "Do you have days of the week like we do?" I'm from the UK. This was 9 years ago and I still think about it. Summer day, around 1980. I'm in 4th grade. Girl in my class lives a couple of blocks away and her house catches fire. We all go to watch the firefighters fight the fire. As we're watching, we see them get the girl and her older brother out and take them inside their neighbor's house. After this, their mom comes flying up to the house in her car, asks where her kids are, and the dumb fireman tells her, in the house. Not in the neighbor's house, in the house. Mom of course loses her ish and bolts for the front door, where cops eventually have to handcuff her to stop her from going in. It felt like an eternity before she understood they were safe in the neighbor's house. Poor woman probably about had a heart attack. I also once had a cop tell me he didn't believe people lied. I was working at Babies R Us and this lady comes in looking for a baby bath. I bring her over to it and hand her the box. She looks at it, makes a weird face, and says, "I don't want my baby speaking Spanish," then sets the box down and walks off. The box had 2 sides. One in English, one in Spanish. To this day I still worry for that child. Girl in my high school class, quite a while ago, probably 10th to 11th grade or so. So can you actually see the equator? Like, is it just a line on the ground all the way around the earth? I, female, have a twin brother. I can't count how many times people have asked me if we are identical. I just dead stare at them until they think through what they asked. If that doesn't work, 99% of the time it does, I just say really slowly, no, we have different chromosomes. Or occasionally, I have to actually explain why boy/girl twins are always fraternal, never identical. My ex-husband whom wanted children, you are not getting pregnant because you aren't doing a handstand for it to get there properly. I still hope he never reproduces and thank God every day I took my birth control. At one of my first jobs as a graphic designer, a client called me into his office and pulled up a photo he took. He then asked me if I could turn it around, no, not rotate it, but turn the viewpoint around. He wanted to see what was behind the camera when he originally took the photo. I was born in a place where the mountains are to the north. My husband and I moved to a place where the mountains are to the west. Roughly a month after living there, we got into an argument about which way was north, and it took me longer than I care to admit to remember I wasn't in my hometown. It wasn't even the same state. I once heard my friend yell to my other friend as they walk out of a bathroom that leads to a somewhat crowded mall food court, "I am not washing my hands. Those sinks are disgusting." What is the sign on bonus? Me, 1500. UNHR need to get on the same page because I was just told it was $1,500. Me, it is. You said $1,500. Like and subscribe for more stories.